All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to provide a little bit of context about how the web works effectively. And so thinking about sort of what the code and what the work that we're going to do, sort of how that's situated in sort of the context of the internet as a whole. All right, so basically, as I said, we're going to go through and we're going to talk about a little bit how the internet works. We'll talk a little bit about what we mean by clients and servers, which are some terms that are going to come up a little bit. So just again, give us context for what we're doing, and then we're going to talk about sort of what the browser does, and then we'll talk about how to program it for that browser starting in the next video. All right, so the way that the internet mostly works is that when people talk about the internet, they're really talking about a set of computers that are all connected together through various networking kinds of wires and tubes and radio waves and all kinds of things. The full details of that doesn't matter. This is not a network topology class. We're not interested in that. But the one thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of is that when we talk about the internet, we're going to really be sort of dividing that sort of all the internet into sort of two main sets of kinds of computers. We have what are referred to as servers, which are going to be things that are hosting web pages. They're basically these are computers, right? That are going to be living somewhere else away from you, right? These are the computers that might be owned by Googles and Amazons and sort of the other big tech companies of the world, or smaller companies as well, right? An individual library might have their own server. And so servers do exactly that. They provide some kind of resource and some kind of information. Generally, they'll serve these kinds of web pages. We talk about saying that they host a web page. You can think of it almost like it's like a party, right? The server is like the host, and they serve food or web pages to people who then ask for it. So on the other hand, we then have clients. Clients are going to be like your computers, right? Your laptop, your phone, your desktop, your own sort of individual consumer device. And what your clients are going to do is your clients are going to be sending requests over to the servers to say, hi, server, I would like to have this web page. The server then serves it. It provides it out to the client for us to be able to see what that is. So the way the system sort of mostly works is that if you take a client and the clients access these servers, they talk to the servers, they communicate them, they send them requests through a web browser. So what browsers do. If a browser's basically job is to say, hey, server, I would like some information, and then do some work with that. So if you take a browser and you type in a URL into the URL bar, we say, I want to go to this website. I want to see this piece of information. Clicking a hyperlink does the same thing, right? A hyperlink will just take you to that particular piece of content. So if you put a URL into the web browser, you're basically saying hi. What you're doing is you're saying, talking to a server, saying your browser will send a request to the server saying, hi, server, whoever you want to put in, Wikipedia, for example. I would like you to send me this particular page. I want to view this page. This is what I want to be able to see. So whenever you type something into the browser, it sends a request. The servers somewhere on the other end will say, great, here's what you need to make that happen. URLs have their own particular format. We'll talk about this more in a later video. We'll go into some more details about this. But basically, you can think about that when you put in this URL, right, it's going to generally start with something like HTTP or HTTPS. That's what's called the protocol. That's basically saying, how are we sending this message? You can think about saying, if I want to get some information, are you asking for it over email? Are you asking for it by sending a letter? Are you asking for it by knocking on a person's door, right? What's the sort of the medium? What's the way that we're asking for this information? In this case, we're using a particular protocol, HTTPS. You'll then indicate what server or what domain, like where are we trying to ask this to? Are we asking Wikipedia? Are we asking University of Washington? Who are we asking for this information? And then sort of after you put the server, the name of the domain, you'll then put generally what resource you're looking for. So in this case, we're looking for the Wiki informatics page. And that's basically what we're saying. We're saying, hi, Wikipedia, I would like you to send me the informatics page. And so when you type that into the browser and you hit go, that's what the browser does. The browser sends that request over to a server and says, hey, this computer has asked for some web page for you to be able to see. That sends it as a request over to the web server. The web server then gets that request in and says, oh man, somebody wants some information. I better provide that. I'm going to be able to serve them the information they want. So what the web servers do is the web server is going to be able to take a whole bunch of files and a whole bunch of different bits of code that indicate that information that the client was asking for. There's going to be a whole lot of these different files. We'll talk about what most of these are as we go. But there's basically a bunch of different kinds of files that will gather together. It takes all these files, it basically bundles them all up, kind of like putting them all inside like a zip file, but it's not actually zipping them up. But it sort of packages them all up into like an envelope, and then it sends that envelope back as a response over to the client. So again, our client says, "Hi, server, I would like a web page," and the web server says, "Great, let me grab a bunch of stuff together. Here's your web page," and it sends it back over to the client. So what your browser then does, right? Your browser job is to take all these files, right? Takes that envelope of content of data that it got back from the server, that the server, responded to its request with. And the browser's job is to then take all that code and all those files and figure out what are they supposed to look like. Based on those files, what am I supposed to actually be seeing on my page? The browser's job is to do what's called rendering this content. It's going to make it appear. So what we're going to do is that when we're writing when we're doing web development, we're sort of doing kind of on the client side primarily, what we're really interested in doing is figuring out how can I figure out what files we might want a server to send back. And then if a browser receives these files, how can we make sure the files are such that the browser will be able to interpret them and make them show the right set of content. We're not going to be worrying about sort of the server side level stuff. We're really focusing on sort of how does the browser display what we want to display. If you're interested in more details about how server stuff works, that would be a different class. We're not going to kind of get that far in this course. But often when people talk about using things like WordPress or using things like their content management system or so these other larger frameworks or pieces of software, those are really server technologies, right? Those are ways of deciding what content should we send back to, right? They're basically deciding what content do we send back to the client. In this class, what we're going to focus on is how do we figure out how to design and write what the kinds of code might be so the client can render it and can make the thing we want show up inside the browser.